Good morning, right? It is on Delta Television, the People's Pride, and of course, joining us right in the studio is someone that I know you'd be happy to have right on set with us. He's no other than Right Honorable Festus Ovie Agas. Yes, that name resonates anytime, any day in the political scene, and of course, other aspects. He was the former secretary to the state government, Delta State, and currently is the chief strategist to His Excellency, the Governor of Delta State. So it's a pleasure to have you join us. Good morning.
We would like to thank you and welcome you to our studio, sir. Thank you.
And we are actually, at the end of the year. This is the 11th month, and gradually we're cruising to the end of 2020, and we're looking forward to another year, 2021. But we cannot but start off on how it started for us. So what is actually, going around in Delta State pertaining to politics, pertaining to development, as it were, generally, and issues that actually impeded some bits as it relates to development. First, I'd wonderfully oppose. I haven't seen you before the pandemic in the studios, and of course, after the pandemic, we're seeing you here. Now, let's hear your thoughts on, the Delta State. We want to start from Delta State before the pandemic and after the pandemic.
Well, thank you very much. You recall that I completed my tenure on secondary government 1.5 years ago, and I felt I was sent. There was a need to be out of the public space so that my successor could at least
strive. Okay.
But by the grace of God, I am equally have been appointed by the governor as the chief strategist. That is still I've been very conversant with the goings on in the state in the area of education, employment, health, education, and security generally. And we're doing very well until the pandemic came up. The pandemic, you are aware, as a world, we're not really prepared for it. Neither was Nigeria prepared for it. Neither did the Delta State government envisage it. But luckily for us, we have a medical doctor who is the chief executive of Delta State. He was quite proactive, and I know, given the constraints, we did reasonably well to contain the pandemic in Delta State.
Okay. All right. Well, you mentioned a thing that actually, resonated with me now, talking about wealth creation. We do know that His Excellency's agenda, it's for a prosperous Delta State in the long run. And he had, his plan, and the driver of his administration, of course, is its agenda, as it were. Now, talking about wealth creation and ensuring that, Deltans are prosperous, as it were, in the long run, what will you share with us so far? Do you think before the pandemic or even after the pandemic that mindset of having, wealth in all nooks and crannies of the state by and large, even the urban area, it's actually been realized?
With due respect to you, I was the chief executive of Senator Okowa's campaign for governor of Delta State.
Okay.
And when the answers protest came up, I told a friend that Senator Okowa, the governor of Delta State, was like a man that saw tomorrow. I recall on one occasion I was traveling with him in his car to Uzeri, and he told me, Festus, one of the things we must address in this country, in this state, is the problem of youth unemployment. And if by the grace of God, if he becomes the governor of Delta State, he will come up with programs and policies that will address that. That's why you see that one of the first things he did when he became a governor was to establish the office of the chief job creation officer.
Okay.
We went further to establish different work creation programs, STEP, YAGE, and in the process over 10-20,000 youths of Delta State have been given relevant skills and attitude to become entrepreneurs instead of depending on government. Because the reality today in Nigeria is no central government, no state government, no local government can employ all of us in the public sector. Therefore, we must think out of the box. We must equip our youths with relevant skills so that when they go out, give them the tools of their trades. When they go out, they become employers of labor.
Okay.
So when the whole thing started, thank God that at at least started some evolution. I'm not saying it's enough because there's still room for improvement. But the luck we have is that over the past 5 years, as a state, the Delta State government has invested a lot of time, energy, and resources on the creation of job opportunities and wealth creation in Delta State.
I still kudos to His Excellency Governor Senator Ifeanyi Okowa for this laudable initiative.
They will have the girl child development program. That program too, they identify young women instead of just leaving them in the streets, instead of just walking in the streets. Government has decided to come up with a policy where they equally train so that they become
something that will not make you sit at home.
Society. Of course, if you see the Ministry of Youth is equally carrying out an action on youth.
Having that foresight, bringing the youth into fish production, into aquaculture, and it will help to boost the economy of Delta State.
I see my one, I'm very happy. Even when I'm feeding the fish with the feed that they gave to me for this program, the fish are very happy. They are eating and they are growing. So I really thank God for our governor bringing this program to us. It was our first batch of feed. This is 30 bags, so I'm still expecting more feed from them. And I'm so happy that the government is able to do something that's profitable, something that will not make you sit
Okay, I was actually coming to that in spite of the program put in place by His Excellency for youth, we still have pockets of violence here. Some say that this is more or less this as more of political origin because what is our own state is what happens in another state. So one should think that in Delta State, His Excellency was able to tell what would have happened in the state as it pertains to Lagos. It wasn't that way in Delta State. Well, what's the magic really? What did His Excellency do to actually do that, to achieve that?
With due respect to you, we talked about 4 or 5 years ago.
Bringing the youth into fish production,
started programs,
and it will help to boost
policies that are youth friendly.
You can see my point. I'm very happy.
During the past 4 or 5 years, I'm saying here that over 20,000 youths
the fish are very happy. They are eating and they are growing. So I really thank God for our governor bringing this program to us.
And the government over the past 4 or 5 years have continued to engage our youth meaningfully. From time to time, you recall we had town hall meetings. Currently, there are town hall meetings going. The purpose is to
beyond
civilized conversations. What are your grievances? So over the years, the youth, to a reasonable extent, have a sense of belonging. Then, you see, when he came on board on a second tenure, he told us that going forward, there's need to involve our youths in governance. So, for example, we have a very young man as the commissioner in charge of youth development. I don't need to tell about that. Then, if you see the escrow itself, you see a lot of young men because he believes that there's need for fresh ideas, fresh faces that can add value to governance. Then, if you find time to see most of our SSAs, SAs, they're actually drawn from the youth population of Delta that are below the age of 35, because we realize that about 70% of our population are youths. So how do you do politics? How do you govern the people without the buy-in, without the input of these youths? So one of the first things that helped us in this, why we had just a pocket of destruction, is that over the past 4 or 5 years, the governor has been youth-friendly in his appointment, in his policies. So when the program started, yes, there were a pocket, like you already said, pocket of violence here and there. But the majority of our youths in the 25 local government felt there was need to give the governor the benefit of that. I'm telling you that before now we've always had engagements with them. So instead of taking to arms, instead of joining those that, you see, when the protest started, it was quite peaceful. It was quite civilized, it was quite organized. Here you saw Nigeria, I saw some young men, young lawyers, young doctors, professionals. They were all part of the protest, singing national anthem, holding Nigerian flags, and it was quite orderly until it was hijacked by some hoodlums. But when it was even hijacked, the majority of the youth, given the fact that the governor has been proactive, has been youth-friendly, they took it upon themselves. In our local governments, you saw them going from place to place, trying to discourage others to say, let us protect our commonwealth. That these public institutions, these public facilities, even these private properties are ours. And if they are destroyed, it will have a boomerang effect on the economy. We are complaining that the economy is tight. We are complaining that there is unemployment. So you saw, so they became advocates of the need for good governance, or became advocates for the need to protect our public facilities. So by the end of the day, it was just, for me, I saw it as a way of showing appreciation to the governor for a job well done.
Okay, I think that's a good take-off point, and I also want to buy into your own concept of the youth. The youth actually make the world, and they rule the world. And in Nigeria, well over 70% are youth. When you talked about the empowerment, just over 20,000. From your understanding, don't you think 20,000 is minimal as compared to the very aggressive youths out there who would actually want to be empowered? And some people also looked at it that, yes, it was more political patronage for only those very select few that were privileged to find themselves in all of these empowerment schemes.
Well, I told you one of the challenges, one of the problems we are facing as a country is that of youth unemployment. Therefore, we must start from somewhere. It is not possible for the governor to have just employed 2,000-3,000 youths. It's not possible. We have limitations, we have our resource constraints, but we needed to start from somewhere, and I think we have started well. I'm talking about the first tenure. When we came on board, you recall, I remember some of you were in Uruguay at SSG Delta. That's when we started it. But the most important ingredient is not enough to say you want to provide, give them skills. Before now, we have a problem, and it's still there, but I'm sure by the grace of God, we're making progress. Okay. We had the problem of mindset change. Mindset changed. Before now, it was business as usual. Everybody graduated, he wanted to work in DBS, wants to work in the office of SSG, wants to work in the Ministry of Education. So the first problem we had was people to change the mindset, to change our people. That's why we took them to Songhai, about 1 or 2 weeks of orientation. So these things have to be systematically done. We just did not take them and give them skills. We took them through careful training, mindset change. Then we equally taught them entrepreneurial spirit. It's not enough to say you've employed a man or you gave him tools to become a welder or tools to do hair design. We needed to teach him or her bookkeeping and how to run businesses, encourage them to even register business names and link them to the microcredit agency in Delta State. And when I expect that we've commenced youth employment or training of youths, I said we've done well, but there's still room for improvement. So I agree with you that the numbers that I've highlighted, currently there must be more than that. I told you that there's still room for improvement. And as we speak, that's why I say that the governor is currently on a town hall meeting. Those meetings are quite open. Nobody's being censored. So the youths have spoken up on the need for government to engage more youths, to provide more employment, and it has been noted. But we must agree that governance is not, the governor is an elected governor that has the legislation, so you cannot just wake up one morning and legislate. So therefore, the bureaucracy works. The points have been taken. I'm sure they'll be taken to ESCO, and if there's need to take them to the House of Assembly so that proper legislation will be passed. Like one of the things we did at the beginning of this second tenure is to properly go to the House of Assembly to legislate on the office of the Chief Job Creation Officer, meaning that this program we've started, we can leave Senator Ifeanyi Okowa as governor of Delta State. Whoever becomes his successor, we have no option other than to continue to implement the law and the program. So I think we've started well, but I agree here that there is need to engage more youths, there's need to teach more youths, there's need to equip them with more skills, knowledge, and starter packs. Otherwise, there'll still be room for more greater problems.
Okay, as a build-up and a follow-up to what you've just said, more like an addendum, the EndSARS campaign was a turning point in Nigeria's democratic milieu. Did you see it coming as a chief strategist?
Candidly, I relate to our youths Our women are elders. And not just in Delta State. Sometimes I have the privilege of traveling to other states. And I know as a matter of fact that most of our youth are dissatisfied with governance. They feel that the country deserves a better governance.
Sure.
They've always believed that there's need for fundamental reforms in the Nigerian polity. They've always believed that there's need for the federal government, the state, the local governments to take a second look at the question of unemployment, to take a look at the security of the nation, to take a look at our educational system, to take a look at our health system. I know they've always had it, but I didn't envisage a situation where they could organize themselves in such a manner, very civilized manner, and protest the way they did. But the beautiful thing about it was that it was organized, it was coordinated, it was a non-violent protest. And whether you like it today, that event is of significance to Nigeria of today and Nigeria of tomorrow. Nobody can wish it away. The truth is, through the protest, the Nigerian youths, the Delta youths, have come to say that enough of impunity, not just the police impunity, there is so much impunity in the Nigerian system.
Obviously.
So they've been able to draw the attention of the entire world, and nobody, no DBS, no channels, no other person could have done it. They've been able to draw the attention of the entire world
Obviously.
toward the need for reforms in the Nigerian system. I saw it, I know they were dissatisfied, but I never knew it could be expressed.
Snowball into this.
But I thank God it snowballed. Today, we have our heroes of the protest. They are equally anti-heroes. Anti-heroes in the sense that people vandals knocked him and instead of the beautiful objects. You know, it had a clear-cut object to draw the attention of government to improve and build and remake Nigeria. That was the object. But later it was hijacked. But by the end of the day, whether it was hijacked or not, the point has been made. Nigeria cannot be seen. We are heading towards the making of a new Nigeria.
All right, as Chief Strategist, we cannot, wish away the agri sector. Amongst agitation during the Tanno meeting was the need for you to actually be more youth to be involved in the agri sector, and the fact that they should also be part of leadership. They want to be there. They want to be. They want to have good positions in governance, so they understand what is really going on. Now, my first catch there is the agri sector. Now, could it be that the agri sector is underutilized rather? Even if we know that they are too into the white collar job or too into the technical bit of it, that the agri sector is there and they don't have more youths in there, and that is why they are actually on rampage. Because the main thing is that there is fine having this program, having the agri programs around the agri sector. They want more youth to be involved, and they also talked about police reform. So it wasn't like they were selfish. They went about police reform. They should be well paid and all that, so that they look away and do the right thing. Now, how would you speak to police reform? How would you speak to the agri sector? Youth clamoring that they want to be part of it. They want more lands. They want to actually farm and ensure that they make a living out of it. We're not talking about just local type of farming, mechanized farming, where at the end of the day they can actually, because what happened, the pandemic, we're all looking for food, right? Food was the major bit. People are not thinking about anything. You find them queuing to get bread, you find them queuing to get food. So food is key. So how would you speak to both sectors really?
You have wrapped many things together, but I'll start from the police reform.
Okay.
It started as end SACs, that is end impunity of the SAC people.
Okay.
But they went further to talk about reforms. They talked about the need for the police to be better equipped. They talked about the need for the police to be motivated, to be well paid. They talked about the need for the insurance of the police. And luckily for us, for the first time in the history of this country, I'm as old as Nigeria.
Obviously.
For the first time in the history of this country, the government, they made their point loud and clear, and the government listened. First, it might be hasty. Some people have said it's hasty. I know this strategic, SARS was disbanded,
almost immediately
with SWAT. And as at yesterday, I know the Inspector General of Police informed us that the government had decided to promote almost every police officer in question. And our government is, yes, it is today in Benin. And our government is equally looking into the other welfare packages that relate to the police. So I must say, to that extent, the government has started doing something. It used to be a dialogue of the deaf. People could just talk, nobody could listen. But the reality today is that government must listen, and government, that is government at every level, can no longer make promises they cannot keep. So it is in the interest of the federal government that whatever promises they are making to the police, they should keep it. Otherwise, youth will come up again to question them. So that's one of the beautiful things that has happened. I can't recall any time, I'm 60, I told you, where government has reacted this swiftly. So we must give that credit to them. Although at the point, maybe they were not too apologetic, but you must equally give it to the vice president. I know he was sober and he did apologize to Nigerians. Those people, those of us in power, we hardly humble ourselves, but you saw the humility he displayed. That is that. Then agriculture, nobody needs to be told. Agriculture, we are aware, used to be the mainstay of this country until we got oil. So the oil money now came in. But as a state, we equally realize that, yes, much as oil contributes so much money to our national treasury, our commonwealth, but in terms of employment, it is IT, it is technologically based, IT related. So it can only employ very few people. So the only way to actually employ Nigerians and our youths is to go back to agriculture. Again, I'm not trying to be patronizing. One of the first things we did, one of the programs I talked about was Yaga. Yaga is actually an agriculturally flavored program. In that program, we realized that it is not enough to just say you are a farmer. You need to be taught new skills. You need to be provided with new inputs. There are a lot of developments. We needed to link you with research. We needed to link you with markets. So that's how we started that program. And by the grace of God, we've done very well. It is not true that that program again is dedicated to the youths, not to you and I. You know, I'm an elder statesman now. So, but like I said, there's room for improvement, and government has invested so much. We believe in agriculture. Recently, we commenced the development of an agro-industrial park in Ogwachuku. It's trying to provide an enabling environment where young men and women who are interested in agriculture will provide common facilities. So all we need to do if you're interested in farming, and it's open to all Deltans, it is not politically motivated. Okay. There's no politics in farming. Those programs were not put in place to patronize a politician. If you don't want to farm, there's no anything. If I don't want to farm, there's nothing I can force you to farm. As I speak with you, because I try to lead by example, and the government encourages us under its employee to lead by example. I'm a farmer. I have a farm. I go to my farm every weekend. So we are simply saying that let us go back to land. And even the Nigerian constitution encourages, allows the civil servant, you and I, public servants to farm. So I want to reassure you that the government is committed to getting more youth involved in our agricultural programs. Government, however, has a little constraint. Our land tenure system. Sometimes when government, we try to encourage farming, agriculture, even big investors want to attract them because we keep talking about bringing investment. But one of the greatest challenges we have is the land tenure system. I don't want to go into specifics. We tried to establish a land bank, and I know the difficulties that the state government has had. But nevertheless, government has continued to engage communities to donate land. You see, it's only when we have land available that we can partition it for our use to really go into agriculture. But I know we have established a land bank. I don't know if you are aware about that. Communities are giving out land. Currently, in the Mosuga Axis, currently I know we are doing maize planting. And in the process, some reserves, you have to come into some of the reserves to provide land. So when this land is available, the only person that have energy, vigor, strength to go into this farming, go into this agriculture, are the youths. But as a government, in order for them to benefit from these programs, we encourage them to form cooperatives. It's only when you have cooperatives, you can now access the various banks of agriculture, the microcredit facilities for loans. So once again, I want to tell you that I agree that our youth should be encouraged to agriculture, but those youth, for them to make impact, for them to be meaningful, for them to benefit from even the government programs, there's need for them to form cooperatives. Like once in a while, like I know just recently we provided tractors and other machineries. The policy is when you give it to a group of young men that are into crop farming, you now have joint facilities. So the tractor is provided. When it's time for land preparation, you register with the cooperative, and you now use to clear your land. When it comes to harvesting, so that is the approach of government. And I think just yesterday I was telling some of my friends, very young friends, that most of the times, even we as youths, when we advertised, when we even put on YouTube and other social media platforms or handles, some of us don't even take pains to even apply. There are so many policies, many programs that we can really benefit from. So I want to appeal to our youths. And for those of them that are not even IT compliant, we have word of mouth. Say, have you heard? The Delta State government is providing land for young men. The Delta State government wants to train additional people. The Delta State government has microcredit facilities. So that's one of the areas where I think our youth must take advantage of. Like I've just told you now that the Ministry of Science and Technology, I'm sure you are aware of it. Currently, they are working on a program on how to improve our skills in digital technology. Some of our youths are not even aware of that. So it is not politically motivated.
Okay, so quickly, the president recently directed ministries and federal agencies to interface with their constituents. I know you have a very strong youth followership base, and recently we saw this Delta State government go around to do the town hall meetings. Is this also a means of bridging the gap between the youths and government?
Well, I must commend the federal government and the state governments. The right thing to do. There was a time for protest. We have left that stage. It is not time for engagement. How do you engage our people? One of the medium, one way to really achieve that engagement is through town hall meetings. The town hall meeting, the youths are invited, the various NGOs are invited, then the community leaders are invited, then the civil society. So in such fora, they are able to express themselves. And because we have a listening governor, I know that the points they made, they are carefully taken care of. So, and I told you that it's no longer time for, it is time for civilized conversation. It's no longer time for a dialogue of the deaf. You know, in those days, sometimes you just talk to government, they just look at you, say it's noted. But I'm saying now it's civilized conversation, meaning that there will be time frames. So these engagements are the right thing to do now, and I urge our youth to avail themselves of this engagement. Luckily, the response has been quite okay in Delta State. So those things will be taken, but they must equally give the government sufficient time to implement those decisions. Because if you make a request, for example, government must process it. So it is not that if you just request or say we want to be involved in large-scale farming, the government cannot just do that tomorrow. It will take the government some time to actually articulate it, legislate on it, and implement it. But I encourage the dialogues, but it's not just because there's crisis. I'm saying that the various governments should work it out maybe at quarterly or twice a year or quarterly, so that you can always feel the pulse of the youths. It's important we feel the pulse of the youths. It's important we make promises and we keep to those promises.
All right, quite extensive there. You've been addressing us as it pertains to youth, and I can see that you have passion for the youths and to ensure that they are actually engaged now. Now, on the front burner, according to the speaker, Baja Biamila, he said that constitutional electoral reforms actually top on the table. Now, do you think this will address some anomalies we have now, talking about restructuring?
Essentially, it started with NSAS, but by the end of the day, if you ask me, it became good governance.
Okay.
And for us to have good governance in this country, we cannot run away from the question of restructuring. Okay. We must go back to federalism. We must go back to fiscal federalism. We must equally go into devolution of powers. The truth is, if you read the Nigerian Constitution, we're just a federal government, federal constitution, just in name. The truth is that what we are practicing is a unitary system of government, and there's no other federation that is run like that in the world. So from this protest, what they use equally just saying is that we must restructure this country. We must go back to having a state police, community police, not the cosmetic community police that the federal government is talking about. We must go into electoral reforms that will encourage the youth to participate more actively in governance. The youth must not wait. Nobody will give them power. They must go and get their PVCs, so that from the unit to the ward to the council level, their voices will be heard. Luckily for us, the governor had promised that his party will encourage his party to nominate youth for the forthcoming councillorship elections. That's where to start from. But I agree there's need for reforms. There's need for the government. What the youth are saying is that they are not satisfied with our educational system. A system that produces graduates, are they really employable? Do they have entrepreneurial skills? The universities, the college of education, the polytechnics, they just produce them. When they produce them into society, they cannot be gainfully employed. So they are simply saying that we want a functional education. They are simply saying that we want a functional, affordable health service, not consulting clinics. You understand? Not just you go to a clinic and they just consult, because over the years, most of our hospitals, if you ask me, they're like undertakers. So these are simply saying that we want to go to a clinic where our lives could be saved. And the only way to do it is to invest more in our health facilities. So that when you are ill, when you are the president or when you are the chief strategist, when you are ill, you don't need to go to Dubai for medical tourism. That's what these are saying. And until we address those problems, until there's electoral reforms, until even the police reform we're talking about, what is the qualification of the policeman? How are they employed? Is it through man no man, or they are actually subjected to a test? Okay. Do they even undergo psychiatric tests? Are they fit and proper persons to be police officers? So these are the things that the youths are agitating for. Essentially, the youths are talking about the remaking of Nigeria, and I think they must be taken seriously. The only appeal I want to give to our youth is that they must be patient. They must come to the table to negotiate, to discuss with government. Then one of the things, we talked about the program, the protest being hijacked unfortunately by hoodlums. The truth is that our youth must realize, I want to appeal to them, must know that those public properties, those private properties that were destroyed are commonwealth. Because the implication of what has happened, assuming, look at the beautiful facility that the governor built at Coca Junction. Many years ago, that place was an eyesore. And when I pass the place, the kind of things I see in America, when you are going on a long journey, you stop somewhere, you want to ease yourself.
Yes, like a rest
place. You want to drink a Coke, want to drink water. Yeah, like those are the kind of ideals that led to the beautification of that place. You burnt it. Then the courts are established for purpose of dispensing justice. So when somebody breaches your rights, that is the place you are supposed to go to for a peaceful resolution of it. All of a sudden you burn it. Inevitably, the monies, our taxes, money that could have been used for other programs, that could have been used to build roads, to build schools, have been burnt. So therefore, I want to appeal to our youths to shun all form of vandalism. Must forgo it. Must not encourage it. Both private and public facilities should not be burnt. Then, when I'm worried, when I'm pained, I am an insider. I know for the past 4 or 5 years, we've been appealing to investors to invest in Delta State, to invest in Nigeria. We've always said that Delta State is investors friendly.
Yes.
That we are secured, that we provide an environment for your businesses to thrive. But what has happened now, the investors are not likely to invest their monies in a state where, when the youths are angry or the citizens are angry, they just
lose everything overnight.
So if you ask my opinion, I want to appeal to them that there's need for us at all times, no matter the provocation, to avoid destruction of public and even private properties. Yesterday I went to the Federal Road Safety Office. I almost cried. I know that thing is a private property. The owner of that property, maybe it took him 10, 20 years to build those facilities. And I saw the number of cars that were destroyed. And I asked myself, you see, I don't want to be modest, but most of the time it is the state government that actually assists some of these federal agencies to procure some of those vehicles. So where will the state government, or where will even the individuals like you and I, because they say, oh, where many individuals, will we get the money to buy them additional cars? So I want to appeal to our youth.
Okay, so quickly, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry on the police brutality and more have been set up. To what extent do you see all of this meeting the yearnings of the protesting Nigerian youths?
Going forward, yeah.
Moving forward.
With due respect to you, the Nigerian laws allows the state to set up an inquiry. The governor had exercised that power. She has set up the Mrs. Justice Ogesis led panel. But as at yesterday, I hear that very few persons have responded. So now that government has heeded to they made some demands, loud and clear. The government proactively has set up this panel. The next question is, the government, we are not magicians as a government. We must listen to you. A panel has been set up. So the next stage is for those of you who think your rights have been breached or infringed upon, government has given an opportunity to come freely without let or hindrance to come and state them so that we can holistically address the problems of that. So it's only when you come forward to speak or to tell us where their rights have been infringed upon, that's when government will know. But I want to reassure you that government is well-meaning, and whatever report comes from that, government will heed to it, government with a security recommendation, because you listen to them, take evidence, of course they're going to make recommendations if need be. This private facility has been destroyed. Is it possible for government to give them some form of help? Or do we give them palliatives? Palliatives is a very interesting
palliative issue.
So if you ask my opinion, please let us avail ourselves of the presence of this facility so that we can ventilate our grievances.
Okay, thank you very much, Osu.
I'm telling you so much to share.
But before we let you go, you were at the point a member of the Delta State House of Assembly, and recently the 2021 budget proposal of about 378.48 billion and sectoral allocations have received misgivings, perhaps out of misconceptions. Can you bring us up to speed on your thoughts on all of this?
The budget, first, if you ask me, I'm a member of ESCO. I'm familiar with the budget of alleviating poverty, budget of recovery. The governor in the budget is well-meaning. I know I've read on social media, some persons have expressed misgivings, but I called my friend that expressed misgivings and said, have you really gone to the House of Assembly to even ask for a copy of the budget? If you read that budget, is dedicated over about 55 to 60% of it is for infrastructural development. It's not for recurrent expenditure. It's not for payment of salaries or allowances. It's for infrastructural development. Then most of it too is in response to the existing problems. If you go to that budget, a lot of money is dedicated to wealth creation activities, is dedicated to women empowerment, is dedicated to, we have other social investment programs for the care of the elderly. So much money is invested into those areas. And of course, we're talking about, if you drive around Delta State, if you drive around Nigeria, there's a problem of infrastructural facilities, broken down infrastructural facilities. So this budget is dedicated to addressing some of those problems. Because when you even talk about insecurity in Nigeria, can you really provide security without good roads?
Of course not.
Yes. Can we, every year, can we talk about a better Delta State if our technical schools, for our vocational schools are not functioning? So if you see that budget, government has said as a matter of policy, in order to equip our youths. Most of the programs in that budget, they are dedicated and committed to the development of our youths. Talk about technical schools. When we built in technical school, we realized that before we came on board, most of the schools were commercial secondary schools. But now we are seeing that every person, you go to a technical school, for example, in that technical school you'll be taught English language, literature, but in addition to that, you'll be taught carpentry, plumbing, tiling, automobile, and other things. So by the time you finish from the technical school, if you're unable to go to a polytechnic or a university, you'll be able to access funds and start a business. That is it. So if you see that budget, government is saying that we will ensure that every local government that does not have a technical school is given a well-equipped technical school. So when people criticize the budget, the only thing I ask my friends, and they are reasonably educated, with due respect to you, one of them is a lawyer like me. I said, my learned colleague, have you read this budget? He told me that true, I've not read it, but I heard it's not a good budget. So we must learn to read. It's not enough.
Nigeria is owing to the tune of trillions of naira, yes, and it's worrisome. What does that lead us to? We're looking at 2021, we want a better Nigeria, and we're still owing. I mean, it's increasing every day. What's your thoughts on it, really?
The reality is, the Nigerian economy is very fragile. I don't want to say, I'm not an economist, I don't want to use very harsh words, and I'm not playing politics here. When it's time for politics, I'll play politics. But the reality is that the economy is fragile. It is a mono-product economy. We are dependent on oil. So what is the price of oil today? It has fallen. And here it's less than 40. Then what is the quantity that we're allowed to pump? So the reality is that what we earn from oil is inadequate. Of course, we've been paying lip service to non-oil sources. So going forward, the country must inevitably borrow. I'm not really scared about borrowing. In business, you must borrow. But the question, what bothers me is, what do we use this money for? So if we borrow and we build new railway stations, if you see the problem, one of the problems we have today is that everything from Lagos comes by road. But in civilized economies, you see rail. So when you import something from America, you can use rail to bring it to Onitsha. But what happened today is that our roads are overburdened. So if you borrow this money and you use them for productive projects,
become a producing country.
Once we produce, we'll be able to repay those loans. So my little worry about Nigeria, about the borrowing, is that are we using them rightly? If you ask my opinion, I do not think the monies are rightly used.
Okay, we'll let it rest there, but with more thoughts on our youths. Now, governments are doing so much. The Tanno meeting going and trying to interface with our youths. What do you think they should do? What should be their own commitment so far? Because we do not want a thing like this again in future. So they should do something as well. They should be committed as well. So how do you think, what should be the level of commitment so far as youths, while the government do their bits as well?
As we round up,
I have
rounding up.
Earlier on, in the course of my discussion, appealed to our Nigerian youths to give the government the benefit of doubt. I've told our youths, I've appealed to them here to participate in the various conversations. There's the town hall meetings, the engagements. I'm appealing to our youths, particularly our youths, and even those of them that hijacked the protest, the hoodlums. I don't want to be too, I try to be nice. I'm a lawyer, I try to be nice. I want to appeal to them to shield their salt. Shield their salt. Go for civilized conversation. Make your demands. Give the government, let's arrive at a timeline. Then there's one problem I discovered during the protest. There's so much distrust even among the youths. When you ask them, who is your leader? They say they don't have a leader because they believe that whoever they nominate as a leader
will hijack the process.
Hijack the process. But the truth is that can all of us, the youths of Delta State, can all of us be leaders? We belong to a team. There must be a team leader. Somebody must be nominated to discuss with government. Then on their part, they must regularly go back to their youth bodies, to the civic society, to brief them of what agreements have been reached and the timeless place. So in all, I want to appeal to the youths. Now this is time for engagement.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No war. If you read the history of even warfare, after the shooting, you must come to the table to negotiate. So if you ask me, I'm saying this time for civilized conversation.
Okay.
And it is more beneficial than doing kung fu fighting.
Thank you very much. Right, Honorable Festus Ovie Agas. In the political parlance, we call him Ushu. We know you have a strong political followership. So what's your message to our followers?
Because I am one as well.
You can see I'm a non-violent politician.
Yeah.
I believe in due process. I believe in law. That's why when I hear that people are saying they should regulate social media, I'm very uncomfortable. And I told my friends in Abuja that allow these youths express themselves. Let them ventilate their views. If you push those views on the ground, you'll be sitting on a keg of gunpowder. So I want my followers, I want my friends, I want my associates to be law abiding, and I want to reassure them that the government of Senator Ifeanyi Okowa is well-meaning. I know he doesn't make a promise he cannot keep. We should give the government the benefit of that. We should listen to them. And by the end of the day, it will be a win-win situation for both the Delta youths, the government, and the people of Delta State.
Talking about win-win situation, quickly, yes, win-win situation. Yeah. Quickly, as we round off, there's no way we will not feel your thoughts on the U.S. election. What's your take on it? Biden and of course Trump. The way it's going, I don't know if you're a Biden or you're a Trump.
Well, America is the apostle of democracy. Even our Nigerian constitution to some extent is patterned after it. Before the elections, there were a lot of tensions, a lot of fears that the electorate would be disenfranchised. There were fears that would be intimidated because President Trump was very unpresidential in some of his remarks. But I've been monitoring it. I discovered that to a reasonable extent, the elections have been free, the process has been going on. And I feel what I've learned from it, I don't want to comment. As at this morning, if you ask me, it's too close to call. Because the electoral process says we have 270 electoral college votes to emerge. Biden is doing about 253. The other man, the President Trump, is about 213. But the man, the president, not too convinced about the propriety of some of those votes, he has rushed to the courts. If you ask me, as a lawyer, he has a right to it. The question I don't know, and I'm going to study the law today. They have what we call Supreme Court at the state levels and the Federal Supreme Court. What I do not know is, can it just rush to the Federal Supreme Court or the state court? That's what I don't know. But if you ask my opinion, it's supposed to start from the state Supreme Court. So the lesson for Nigeria is that we should build strong institutions and allow the process to flow, to function. People voted. So far, we've not heard of cases of rigging. So far, we've not heard about that.
That's true.
And so what we need, the lesson for Nigeria, is we should build strong institutions. If we have an independent national electoral body, let it be independent. Let it be independent.
Well, thank you very much, sir. We've actually learned a lot today.
Yes.
You're a follower. I'm a follower.
I'm a follower of the team.
I'll always be a follower any day, anytime. Yes, we've been interacting with the Chief Strategist to His Excellency, the Governor of Delta State, Right Honorable Festus Ovie Agas, telling us so much about the state of the nation. A lot we learned today to run with. We appreciate you, sir. And I do know that we will definitely come to you for more advice, and that's it, because that is why you're there for us, your father. All right, then stay with us. We'll have more sports as we'll fill our headlines today, and of course analyze a bit of our big stars. Be back shortly. Stay with us.
Thank you very much.
qualitative and functional primary and secondary education. The governor said the Ministry of Technical Education was established in 2019 to prioritize technical training in the state and called